When we think of a family unit, we think of like the biological family unit, right? Like mom, dad, and tiny humans who then grow up to be. Yes, you're a biological unit with your family, but you're also this beautifully intricate energetic system. And if you can think of your unit as an energy system, it's going to help a lot throughout this episode.
Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 58th episode of the Hardcore Human Design Podcast. I'm Miko, and on the other side of the world, we have Celestina.
Hey, yo.
Today, we're going to be talking about family dynamics in human design and how you can improve those dynamics when you really understand and, well, hopefully live your human design chart. So what that means is being as authentically you as possible and also trying to support your family members in doing the same. This is what human design is here for, and it's very fascinating when you're combining human design charts with other individuals and really understanding the dynamics that you guys have as a family. We've done it with couples. We've also done it with a friends cast. So check out the video if you haven't done so yet for the BG5 insights into the friends cast. Although they are not a penta, we kind of looked at it as a penta. They are more of a wa because there are more than 5 individuals and a penta is only 3 to 5 people. But check it out. It's going to give you a few insights into what a team can look like and what the dynamics of a team can look like. And a family is also a team. So this is why we wanted to dive into the subject today. We're going to touch on it not from the BG5 or WA perspective, but we're going to take a look at it more from a understanding your aura type, your inner authority, your profiles, and how those resonate with one another, and also the definition of when a couple comes together, having these 9 and 0 nowhere to go, or 8 and 1 have some fun. Those are creating certain kinds of opennesses or closednesses to having another individual in your life, which I also find a very interesting perspective. So if you are a couple, for example, that is a 9 and 0 nowhere to go, then it can be very challenging for a child to fit into this dynamic because you already feel very complete and whole within yourselves.
So let's take a high level of understanding family dynamics through that human design lens. When we think of a family unit, we think of like the biological family unit, right? Like mom, dad, dad, and tiny humans who then grow up to be adults. But let's just take this as the quintessential 4-person family, right? Regardless of mom, dad, mom, dad, tiny humans. Yes, you're a biological unit with your family, but you're also this beautifully intricate energetic system. And if you can think of your unit as an energy system, it's going to help a lot throughout this episode and just understanding where you fit into that and where the rest of your family fits into that, whether it's your siblings, your tiny humans, your partner, you, how that all comes together, keeping in mind the energetics of all of it. Also, when we look at the different design types, there's different auras, right? Like some people feel like a giant hug. Some people feel repelling. Me, for example, feel repelling, right? So there are definitely different aspects of you and your design that are going to play into different aspects of your family's energetics. It's also really important to note that if you know your family's energetics, amazing. And you can do your part in that, right? Like you can do your part in helping to ensure that your children, for example, are living out their designs to their fullest by asking them some of those questions if they need yes or no questions, or asking them leading questions, or just being an ear for them, right? There are a lot of different things that you can do to promote that as well. But this can be amplified even more when your entire family is aware of their energetics and what they bring to the table. If you haven't already, highly recommend getting a reading with Miko. She doesn't put herself on blast enough, but highly recommend getting a reading with Miko of your own energetics, and then if your family's down for it too, perhaps them getting an individual reading with her, and then ultimately having all of you guys come together so she can read your energies together and you guys can gain a better understanding of where you may amplify or where someone may have the potential of doing something to your energy and or vice versa, right? We can be in control of so much, but understanding it and noticing it when it arises is really the key in all of this. So that's a super high level of what we're going to be looking at today. But really do keep in mind that your family is an energetic system.
I love the point that you made that, that it's an energetic system and not necessarily related to the genetics. That is a very important aspect to take a look at, because as soon as you come together with different people, whether you're related through blood or not, you're still creating a dynamic. And the other side to this as well, though, is that you can see certain elements of your heritage, your genetical heritage in your chart. So when you're looking at the unconscious aspects in your chart, it shows you things from 5 generations back. That's how it's transmitted in human design. That you will see aspects or dynamics that you take on from your ancestors. So even if you don't know your ancestors consciously, you can still see aspects in your unconscious in the human design chart. So maybe what did you take on from your father? What did you take on from your mother, your biological father, your biological mother? And then when you're looking at the individual charts of your parents, whether related or not, whether you call them parents or foster parents or whatever it may be, but the dynamic that you have in your family, then you will also get to understand how they influence you and how you influence them. So one thing, because I've done a lot of research on manifestors recently, is that Ra himself was a manifestor, and he spoke of when he came into the world, it was really a force to be reckoned with. And it really changes a lot of the family dynamics. So it is with the repelling aura that they have, they really make a bold statement of, hey, I'm here. And I don't know if you can speak a little bit about this. Have your parents ever spoken of this? How did it feel for them to have a manifestor child? So I think this would be a very interesting thing to know more of.
Yeah, so my parents are both emotional manifesting generators. My dad's a 6'2", my mom's a 2'4". And me coming into the world as a 6'2" ego manifestor, I think really rocked their world. I guess kind of getting a little bit personal. Sorry, Ma. But my mom had really intense postpartum. And I don't know if that was due in part to like energetic changes. I would love to look into that though. I wonder how much of that is like the energetic changes and dynamics in the family in addition to the hormone changes that happen in women. I'm sure it's both. But my mom had really intense postpartum, and like maybe 5 or 6 weeks after I was born, she's like, yo, I need to peace out for a little bit. This is a lot. She like went to go stay with like a different part of her family for a couple of weeks just because it was a lot. But I know for a fact that I like changed the I don't know if the direction of their lives is really the right terminology, but my mom always says that I've taught her a lot. And I always say like, this is not my first go around on earth, right? And like, I know that for her too, but there's some aspects where it does feel like I'm kind of the adult in the relationship of all 3 of us. So yeah, it's a bit interesting in that regard. I've also seen other manifestor children. Like there's this one family that I know, they have a little emotional manifestor in their world, and she was the firstborn, and she absolutely rocked their world. Super charismatic, tiny little human. And then they had a generator daughter like right after hers, and their world was far less rocked, which I think is just, it's interesting. She was also far less charismatic than her older sister. And they're just different energies, right? Like it's different energies in a room, and you can definitely tell the differences, especially in tiny humans when they're coming into the world. like an emotional tiny human versus a sacral tiny human. My bestie has an emotional MG and a sacral generator, and damn, those kids are so vastly different. So I know that was kind of off topic. You just asked me about manifestors, but I've had experience with a lot of tiny humans as of late, because apparently in your 30s, all your friends have kids. So yeah.
I love that you shared that because I think this is super interesting to look into. And I really wonder if type and inner authority impacts the woman more or less after giving birth. So I would really love to take a look at that.
Dude, probably even in utero, because you have a
Yeah.
tiny human. You have energetics inside of you. Mind fuck.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
No, but it's true. When you consider the design side coming into play approximately 88 days before birth, so this is when the design side is created, and then you have the personality side that is created afterwards. When we looked at Lady Di, for example, with Harry, we could see that he gave her the emotional inner authority, the connection to her throat. He was connecting her throat, so she was able to express her emotions more easily when he came around. And I think that that does have an impact. So the design aspect of your child must have an impact already in utero. And the personality side will only be created once you're born, but energetically, of course, I strongly believe that this has an impact. And what seems to happen is that women, when they're giving birth to a son, it's a very different energy. A male baby being in your energy field, I think that's a very different energy. And what I've heard is that a lot of women, they throw up more when they have baby boys instead of baby girls. And I think this could also be an aspect with type, although what is interesting is that it doesn't get defined until birth, usually. So you will have a few that may have a design aspect that is created that is already providing a fixed way of them being. So if you have a manifesting generator, an emotional manifesting generator, then it's clear. Like, there's nothing else that can happen. That's, you have the emotional center defined, you have a manifesting generator in the design aspect. You will have a manifesting generator when they're born. There's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting thing to look into.
I think we just cracked out something, dude. I think we just found something.
There's so many things to find in human design. It's crazy.
Yeah. But if you haven't already, guys, like, just witness the tiny humans around you in your world. If you know their designs, it's really cool to see them in action. Like, really, really cool to just see them be themselves. Because gentle parenting is a thing now, and people just kind of let their tiny humans be tiny humans, which is totally fine. It's just really cool to be able to see them in their, like, most pure little essence of themselves.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because as a manifested child, the approach that parents should have is very different than what parents used to have, because it was more, you need to follow my rules back in the day. This gentle parenting thing was not a thing. It was not, okay, let me understand your emotions, where are you coming from, but instead, you do what I tell you to. So as a manifested child, explain what would have been the correct way of you being guided by your parents and maybe what actually happened.
Yeah, I guess just informing or asking them to inform me about what I was doing, where I was going, versus them being like, no, Celestina, don't do that. And it's interesting. My parents, for the most part, actually kind of like just let me do and let me be for the most part. I mean, if it was dangerous, probably not. But even if it was, I like fell, I'd cry, and then it'd be fine, you know? I found that more with my grandparents, of them saying like, no, don't do that. And then I'd freak out because anger is real.
Yeah, I can just imagine Celestina as a little kid being angry. No, but I think this is a very important part. So if you do have kids or if you're around kids, then really try to adjust to their type. And as a manifestor kid, if you have a manifestor kid around, teach them how to inform and then kind of talk to them about it instead of just saying, no, you can't do it. Get to understand what is behind the reason of them wanting to do something. And this would be for manifestor children, for projector children, for example. Invite them to do things. When it comes to sports or meeting new people or something like this, invite them, but let them decide for themselves if they really want to do that or if they don't want to do that, and get to know their inner authority as well. How do they make decisions? What do they need to feel? Are they emotional? Do they need to wait out their wave, or can they make spontaneous decisions through the spleen or the ego? Really understanding that, or do they have to speak things out? Do they have to communicate with you to find a conclusion when they're a mental projector, for example? If they have the G center as their inner authority, a self-projected projector, for example, really understanding these differences, it's so helpful, because then you can really help them grow into the person that they are here to be. And one thing that I noticed with my parents that I really didn't like when I was put into a situation and I had to deal with it. Like when they had friends over and those friends had kids and then I had to go play with those kids. I don't like that, and I couldn't handle that very well. So instead, talking to me about it beforehand and saying, hey, we're going to have friends over, and would you be happy to just do something with them, or would you rather just go and play with your own friends and not be here while they're here? At least I would have had a decision to make, a hard pull or not. So yeah, inviting projectors to do something is helpful and also very important, because this is the only way that they will find the right kind of sports for them, for example. Because if a projector is not invited into a sport, so if you think, hey, maybe they would like horseback riding, or they would like karate, or they would like to play soccer or something like this, invite them and see how they feel about it. They can also go check it out if they have an undefined G center. Just feel into it, see how it feels to actually play soccer or ride a horse. Invitation is very important for projectors.
So if you have kiddos who are generators or manifesting generators, or even a partner or another member of your family who is an MG or a generator, ask them yes or no questions. Allow them the space to be able to tap into their sacral. Their sacral inherently knows if they want Chinese food or Mexican food tonight. You just have to ask them. And maybe just say, do you want Mexican food? And they're like, mm-mm. And then you're like, do you want Chinese food? And they're like, mm-hmm. So make it easy, not even this or that. Simplify it even more. And with your kids, even before they're speaking, you can kind of do this, because it's really just a mm-hmm or mm-mm. So this is something that generators can tap into when they're really little. Whereas what Miko was saying with projectors, especially like a mental projector, could you imagine being like, okay, Sally, I'm going to invite you to play this game now. And she's like, bro, what are you talking about? You know? So I can see it being more challenging to start at a younger age, especially if the mental projector, for example, isn't communicating. But with generators and manifesting generators, they can tap into that almost instantaneously, and really giving them that space to be able to do so, in addition to respecting all other parts of their chart, is going to be really important as well.
You make a really good point with mental projectors, especially when they are multilingual, because it takes much longer for them to actually be able to speak, because they're parallelly learning several different languages. So they have a lot more vocabulary to catch up on, and then they try to communicate and verbally speak out what they feel they should do to get an inner answer. Yeah, but that's just, yeah, you're making a good point that generators and manifesting generators, simply being able to use and it's an easier or an earlier stage of really getting to understand what it is they desire, they want to do. And to that point as well, don't tell your manifesting generator or your generator to use their words, because the inner and is their gut speaking. So this is really their inner truth. This is when you will really receive what they truly want. And so to tell them to use their words is a bit counterproductive in this whole situation. So Yeah, the reflectors.
The reflectors are such an interesting one, right? Having to wait a lunar cycle. I feel like if you don't experience this as a human, it can be challenging to teach it. But really, just giving this person a decent amount of time outside, alone, away from the rest of the family is going to be really important to help this person understand what they want, what they need, and what they're here to do, right? Like, I work with a reflector, and he's an integral part of the team, being able to show you what works and what doesn't, and that is beautiful. But also giving them their space and being able to really respect that they need that space is not something that's against you. It's not something that's against the family. It's something that they need to still be part of that familial unit in a healthy way for them. So give that a noodle if you have a reflector in your family or if you're raising a reflector.
And while on the subject of kids, another point, so once you've really understood their type, to dive into their inner authorities. So this is a very important aspect of how they will be making decisions. We kind of touched on it. If you want to know more about this, check out our inner authorities episode. Additionally to that, what I also like to include, even though the environment only becomes important later on in life, after your 30s approximately, this is when being in the proper environment is going to be more and more important. I like to use this for kids as well. So if a kid, for example, is sick, then if it's a cave child, for example, creating these caves for them, these with bed sheets and chairs and something like this where they can really curl in and hide away from the world, it's going to be helpful to support them in such a way. So understand their environment to help them become healthy again. This is very beneficial, even though that the environment, the actual environment, is only going to really play a part later on in life. For kitchens, for example, if it's a wet kitchen, inhaling essential oils, depending on the age of the kid, of course, because essential oils can be very, very strong. So you need to bear that in mind. But as in the way of treating yourself or your kids, as a wet kitchen, you can use water as the carrying source. So you drip in some essential oils into boiling water and you put a little towel over your head and you inhale it. As a dry kitchen, I would recommend using a tissue instead, putting the essential oils on a tissue and inhaling it, because they are dry, they're not wet, so humidity is not beneficial for them. So understanding these kinds of nuances is really going to be very helpful to raising your kids, but also to helping yourself.
So if your direct light, i.e. me, flower child, is sick, you just put her in front of a window.
For example, well, you can also use... Well, you can use light therapy instead. So you can use red lights or just something that will help them, depending, of course. If it's an inflammation, you're not going to use red light because it's just going to make things worse. But just understanding different types of light elements and maybe really working with this. So, for example, having a winter blues light, I don't know what they're called, but those artificial sunlight.
Sad
lamps, yes. So having this is very, very helpful for a direct light individual, especially in winter. So really understanding these things can help you.
You live and you learn. What do you know?
Yeah, we went all over the place.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's good.
Yeah. So yes, we have been jumping around a bit, but next up, we are going to talk a bit about definition and the family's connectivity. So definition meaning what you have defined in your chart, what's colored in, and what is either open or undefined in your chart, meaning no color, potentially no gates coming out of that as well. We've talked about this a million times, but if you are undefined in a certain place, you are going to be amplifying other people's energy. And I've used this example a million times as well. But my undefined emotional center it can be intense to amplify someone else's energy, especially having two emotional parents. So If you know that about yourself, right? If there is a certain aspect of your chart that is undefined and other members of your family have it defined, especially if it's an emotional piece, notice your emotions in that moment. Notice whatever center of your chart is undefined and how you may be affecting that other person in that moment if they are feeling the big feels, and vice versa. What can you learn from someone who has that defined center, especially if they're bridging your gaps in that center, and perhaps with that person, you now have a defined sacral center, for example, and you know that that's not your energy, but you can potentially positively utilize that sacral center when you have to clean the house as a team, right? So there are definitely some benefits to knowing what you have defined and what family members have defined as well, or undefined. This also leads into your energy dynamics as a family. Are you a single definition? Are you a split definition? Are you a triple split? Are you a quad split? The more people you add into the mix, the less likely it is to be a quad or a triple split, but it can still happen. However, if you have a family unit of 3 or you're probably either a single definition or a split definition. So give that a look as to whether or not you feel whole in your family unit, or your family unit as a whole feels whole. There's got to be other words to describe that, but we're going with whole today. Any other thoughts on that, Miko?
Yeah, I think the defined and undefined centers you mentioned is a very important one, where in my family, all 3 people have the root defined. So I feel a lot of pressure when they feel pressure. So being aware of that, I can be like, okay, there are certain individuals that I feel more pressure from than others. And the other interesting part is that we're still emotionally undefined when we're all together. Because my parents are both completely open in their emotional solar plexus. So there's just, we are an unemotional family. No, we are we can be very emotional. It's really just interesting to see that and to observe that as well in connection with the transits, understanding when we're going to be very emotional, because we're all going to be amplifying the transit. So just imagine a very interesting dynamic. And if I'm aware of that, I can just be like, hey, I'm feeling this, and I'm just going to take a step back. I'm going to peace out. Yep. Just take a walk with Ananda. The transits also play a role. So understanding where you're defined, where you're undefined, where the other ones are defined and undefined, where they're going to be amplifying things. It is so helpful to being able to communicate with each other, because there are certain subjects that you may want to wait until you're a bit less emotional to really talk about them, or if you are an emotionally defined being, to just wait out your wave before you're mentioning something. So there are many ways that are very helpful to understand in family dynamics. The other thing as well is that when you are defined in certain centers, with another person also being defined in this same center, then you're going to be able to connect on that center. So when you have the emotional solar plexus defined, both of you, for example, then you will understand this a bit more easily in certain aspects. It's where you guys connect. You connect on an emotional level. So understanding that is also another very helpful thing. And then, of course, when we're talking about definitions, we are also going to be looking at compromises, or dominance channels, or friendship channels, or electromagnetic channels. And that is another very important way of understanding, hey, where can we work together? Where can we not work together? How do we work together as a family? But also, how can we support one another in certain aspects? And where are we going to rub each other the wrong way, and why? So there are so many things that you can find out when understanding all of these aspects, because if you're the only one who's into the subject in your family, if you are the one understanding that, then you can hold space for the people in your family. You can be like, hey, okay, I saw this in the chart. I know that this is happening with us, that I can learn how to work with this in a different way. I don't have to react emotionally towards this challenge that we have. When I understand that this is a challenge, you can put things into place that are going to help you reduce this challenge. I find this really invaluable. So useful to have this knowledge. And the other aspect that you can look at as well when it comes to family dynamics or how you connect with someone is your profiles. Are you in resonance? Are you in harmony with the profile of the other person? Can you even understand the other person in certain things, or do you have difficulties understanding certain lines? As a 6-2 profile, understanding a fourth line, for example, can be challenging because there is no resonance. There is no... It's harder to understand in certain aspects. Even the first line can be difficult because these are foundational lines, and as a 2 or a 6 line, you don't have much in common, so you don't need that necessarily. On the other hand, just because you're a 6-2 profile doesn't mean that you don't need safety and security, you don't need a solid foundation, because when you go deeper into a chart, you can still have these aspects as being important to you. When you're looking at color, tones, and bases, you will get to know far more about what it is you truly need, and maybe a foundation is important in certain aspects to you. So that's why you feel like you need a bit more safety in certain topics than in others. This is what is also fascinating in human design, is that even if you're not defined in certain areas in your chart, there's so much potential to become wise in these areas. So you can learn a lot from your undefined areas. And I always like to look at it as we do have everything in us, because we do get defined by the transits, we do get defined by the other people in our lives. So we do have the experience of every single gate, every single line in some way or the other. But the defined areas are where we have the consistent energy flow. It's where, when we spend a lot of time alone, we really get to understand what that means for ourselves. Who are we by ourselves?
100%. So now that we've looked at some key chart areas for you to look at, let's look at what areas can potentially cause some stress amongst families. Because let's be real, not everything all the time is puppies, sunshine, and rainbows. So,
Puppies.
The first... Puppies. So the first thing is unconscious conditioning and not self behavior. If you have people in your family who are not in their self, they haven't done the work, they haven't done the unsexy, unconditioning shadow work, it can be really challenging to be in that family dynamic, right? Like if something is awry with even just one person or even one aspect of one person, it can be very challenging to be in that family dynamic. This really leads itself to amplifying each other's fears, each other's anxieties, each other's pressures in an unhealthy way, rather than in a healthy way to learn from or in a healthy way to get stuff done. And it can be really detrimental, right? So doing the self-work as an individual is really important, but then allowing that to also feed into the family dynamic can be really helpful as well, especially if there are a lot of stressors in the family dynamic currently. What that can look like is potentially understanding everyone's human design a little bit more, perhaps going to family therapy, perhaps taking some more alone time as each person, or depending on what their needs are based on their design. But yeah, those are just some small applicable ways that as a family you can potentially get over some of that not self funky behavior.
Yes, and on the not self as well, or on the conditioning that we're exposing to family members, with human design you can really see that every single one of us is going to have a different perspective. We're going to see the world differently. We are all wearing different colored glasses. And the more you're allowed to see through your original pair of glasses instead of just putting one pair onto another of the eyes of your children or the eyes of your partner or whatever it may be. This is how you're conditioning someone. You're conditioning someone if you want them to be like you. If you are a manifesting generator and you gave birth to a projector, for example, or a manifestor, to expect them to be like a manifesting generator, it's not how it's going to work. So human design really helps you to put yourself into someone else's shoes and to accept someone for really being different to you. And this is what I love about it as well. It just helps you, even if you don't know someone's design, you automatically become more accepting of other people, because you're like, okay, he may be defined emotionally, he may be just have the root defined, or you start to make up things in your mind. And even if it's not the case, it just helps. It's like believing in God or believing in source or believing in spirit or whatever it may be. You're like, yeah, whatever happens, it happens for a reason. So you always have somewhat of a reason. You're like, yeah, it's fine. That's just how it is. That's how different we are. And I like that a lot. So conditioning, or just leaving the other person be as they are, is an important path just in life. And you don't need human design to do that. You can also just genuinely be a person that just accepts the other person for who they are, of course. But human design just helps you kind of put a reasoning behind that and give our mind a logical way of understanding things. Yeah, conditioning or not conditioning is an important part in family dynamics.
So now that we've harked on the not so nice parts or the potential stressors for families, how can families grow together? I think the biggest thing is making decisions as your inner authority and strategy are, right? So really recognizing and respecting that each person in your family is going to have their own unique way of decision making that is going to be best for them, and encouraging that amongst your family as well. Yes, do your best to do you, but also if you can encourage, like we talked about, inviting projectors, allowing your manifestor family members to inform you of things rather than ask for permission, do a gut check with your generators, and give your reflectors some space and isolation. If you can respect all of that in addition to their inner authority, there is going to be a lot more space for positivity and growth as individuals within the family. That's just going to make the energetics of the family so much stronger. So give that a shot. And you can go to those deeper levels too, right? Like if you're beyond like profile, type, authority, take a look at some of those deeper levels. Take a look at one's cognition, or obviously if you have an accurate birth time, right? Take a deeper level, especially into the 4 arrows. We have a whole episode on that. It's going to give you so much more insight into your family as well, and the specifics of what the others in your world need to feel supported and just need for their own health, right? To then contribute to the health and growth of the family dynamic as a whole.
Yeah, I love that as well. When looking at the variables, it helps you when you understand someone's digestion, for example, because if you are aware of someone needing direct light to digest things a bit better, or if you're aware of someone needing silence when eating, if you are aware that your child, especially when you work with children, you have the biggest chance to help them not be so conditioned in the first place. That's the most beautiful part about this. You can really help them grow into the person that they are supposed to be, instead of then having to decondition them once they're older. So if you have older kids, there's always time to start with this, even if you're starting with your partner, but really diving into this. When it comes to eating habits, it's so helpful, because then you don't have to be like, hey, let's just eat together at a certain time because this is what society tells us to do. Yes, it's beautiful to eat as a family. Okay, don't get me wrong here. And I think it's also important. It's important to foster a family bond. But there are certain types that will digest better when it's dark already. They will digest less efficiently when it's light. Then there are other individuals that will digest better when they're in a restaurant, when things are moving, when it's loud. And then there are others who are going to digest better when it's quiet and calm. So understanding that is just, again, going to provide you with another way of being kind and caring towards one another instead of feeling resentment because they don't feel like doing something. Like they don't feel like eating up while standing or while walking, because there are some people that are okay with doing that and other people that are not. They want to sit down, enjoy their meal in calmness. And so, yeah, it's just, it helps.
So another way families can grow together is through honoring different communication styles, how different centers, if they have them defined or undefined, process and express that information. Especially if someone has dominance in a channel connected to the throat, I feel like this is extremely important in that instance. Because if they have the full channel, they may be able to express the emotion, the inner feeling, the thought, the love and direction, the heart very clearly, or even stuff from the sacral very clearly. However, if one person in the family only has a gate on either end of that, they may feel as though they may not be able to fully communicate that. And that's because they maybe can't. Note if you or other members in your family, your kiddos, your partner, your siblings, if there's dominance in any of the channels in your family. And that can just be really helpful because those can be contention points. So noting them and allowing each other the grace and space needed to be able to communicate that fully, even if the person only has one gate, can be really impactful and help mitigate fights. So noodle that, keep that in mind. And yeah, understanding your family's human design, I think, can be such a powerful tool for navigating challenges, deeper understanding of each other, leading to potentially deeper connections, and just gaining a better understanding and honoring the uniqueness that we all have rather than trying to be like, oh, we're all from the same family, we're all the same. You know, you have that like one kid who's like really, really different. It's probably because their design is really, really different than the rest of the vibes of your family, right? So just understanding that, I think, can be so impactful as to what they bring to the table and highlighting what other people bring to the table rather than being like, oh, they're different, right? Dude, human design is all about the uniqueness that we bring and highlighting that. So cultivate your environment, cultivate the love in your family rather than focusing on the quote unquote negatives of the differences. Highlight the uniqueness, highlight the positives. Mic drop.
Love that. And I feel like this is a perfect ending to this episode. Yeah, there's nothing more to say. You've finalized it perfectly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
All right, guys, see you next week when we're leaving Love Month and going into
Salem Witch Trials.
Oh, yeah, we are.
That was the perfect ending to this podcast. I don't know what else to add to this, so I feel like, yeah, you've summed it up perfectly. Oh, even better ending. For everyone that wasn't watching, she just did the hearts thing on Apple. So thank you for listening, and confetti.
I'm sorry, I'm distracting you.
Never going to end this. Oh my God. You ended. I don't know how to end this. I feel like this was the perfect.
All right, so Miko is not doing okay right now. Not finish this sentence. Anyway, guys, this was a fun episode to record. Next week, we are shifting out of Love Month and going straight back to 1692 and the Salem Witch Trials. What? I know, it's exciting times here.
Can't wait. Can't wait for that one.
So good. All right. If you like our podcast, share it with the world, subscribe, like, comment, leave the stars wherever you listen/watch. Thanks, guys. Oh, and we're in HD. Like, we're super crispy now. So you're welcome. Finally updated my laptop. On that note, ciao, guys.
Bye, everyone. Hardcore, the human design Bloopers.
Ashley Tisdale back in the day, man. Ooh, that could be an interesting one. It's got to be like the 15th anniversary of High School Musical at some point. Maybe we can do the cast of High School Musical.
Sure, I'll watch it until then.
Cool. There's 3 of them, so catch up.
Oh, that's a lot. Oh, I always hear people talking about it. Still not seen it, but okay, cool.
We're all in this together. Ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum. Yeah. We're gonna have fun, fun, fun. Something, 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 something in the sun. That's from the first one and the second one. Oh, bro. And then Camp Rock. So good.
So they actually got better?
Better is
Because that never happens.
Better is an overstatement.
But they stayed equally good?
They did those things.
Well, because it's like a trilogy, they always end up, or usually, most of the time, it ends up getting worse.
Yeah, well, there was Troy and Vanessa Hudgens' character's love story progressed. And then in the third one, they were all going to college. So just like, oh my God, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Human Design.
Beautiful transition.
Good. I tried. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 58th episode of the Hardcore Human Design podcast.
58?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Fascinating. I think it's the 58th. Wait, did we record another one after Leonardo DiCaprio? Cool. 58th.
Let's start with some high-level family dynamics through that human design lens. So,
Oh, sorry. Tried to kill my frog in the throat. And I swear I clicked. But no, guess
okay.
not. We should look into, because my wife's brother is currently pregnant. I don't know if I can say that already, but let's just say she's currently pregnant again.
You said my wife's brother.
My brother's wife. Oh my God. Okay.
And Miko just came out on the podcast.
Okay, let's try this again. No. So.
God. It's like an alien. Oh my God.
Oh my God. This went. Wow.
Sorry, I've been up since like 4 on and off. That's why my eyeballs have like you this morning.
It was one of those days.
My side story, just to you, I'll edit this out, but I got really hot in my room, and then I like took the sheets off, and then I looked at my clock and it said 3:01, and I said, "Not today, Satan," so I put my phone back down. And then I covered my head with my blankie like this way, and I kept trying to close my eyes, but like my top of the head situation was like glowing, and I'm like, what is this message I need to receive right now at 3 a.m? Whatever happened, I like self-reiki'd it through, and it made my tummy ache go away that was keeping me awake. So I guess it wasn't Satan at 3:01.
Very confusing. They look very similar.
Yeah. So that was good. Anyway, back to manifesting generators and generators.
Still fun.
Were you at a good place to be able to flow into rejectors? Or, sorry, rejectors.
The 6th type in human design, or the 5th one, depending on who you ask. Rejectors. a combination of manifesting auras, pushing you away, and reflectors. The rejector. It's like a Terminator. Yep. So I don't know where I was.